Hello and welcome to the Swan Song Project Podcast. My name is Ben Buddy Slack and I'm the founder of the Swan Song Project and the host of this podcast. The Swan Song Project is a charity. We're based here in Leeds in England, and we help people who are facing the end of their lives or dealing with a bereavement to write and record an original song. We believe in celebrating lives, making memories and leaving legacies. If you'd like to find out more about the charity, you can visit our website, which is swansongproject.co.uk. The podcast features songwriters. Each episode I have a different songwriter on. I ask them to share with us one of their songs. We talk about how they wrote it. I ask them to share a songwriting tip, and I also ask them to share songs meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. This episode features Beth Rose. We're talking about her debut album Fable, which is coming out soon. And it's a really fascinating and fun conversation. We cover a lot of interesting ground. I think you'll be really going to enjoy it. If you do enjoy it, please consider liking, sharing and subscribing to the podcast. We've got a lot more great guests coming up that you're not going to want to miss. So without further ado, here's Beth Rose on the Swan Song Project Podcast. Enjoy. Okay, today I'm here with Beth Rose. Thanks for joining me, Beth.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking to you. This is the Swan Song Project Podcast. For anyone new to the podcast, we do it in three sections. First, we're going to have one of Beth's songs, and we're going to talk about how she wrote it. Section 2, I'll ask Beth for a songwriting tip. And in Section 3, we're going to talk about songs meaningful to Beth in some way relating to bereavement. So over to you, Beth. Which song of yours have you chosen to talk to us about today?
This is the second song of my album Fable, and it's called Anxiety Society, and it's basically what it says on the tin. It's about how society affects our mindset.
Brilliant. So we'll have a listen to it now. This is Anxiety Society by Beth Rose.
Bits wear thin when the trenches are traversed too often. She sits down to catch her breath. She checks her pockets. Knife. Displayed but not used. Check. I'm voracious in my appetite, ferocious in my thoughts. I am empty. I drew lines in all the crosses and I lived in all the knots. I am gone. I'm a product of environment and modest to a fault, a commodity. I'm a woman, I'm a fighter, I'm too much, I'm a liar, I am cool. Anxiety, keep up the play, pretend. Is this the way we end? Is this what you want from me? Anxiety, keep up the play, pretend. Gotta play the game until the end. It kicked me in the stomach and it held me at gunpoint. I am lifeless. I shouted from a promise, took up space, I raised a storm. I am void. I'm every single thing this world has told me I should be. I'm a nightmare. I'm a person, I am everything you want. I am wrong. Anxiety, keep up the play, pretend. Is this the way we end? Is this what you want from me? Anxiety, keep up the play, pretend. Play the game until the end. Play the game, don't stop. Where the weight you lifting up. No one sees the cracks begin to form below the surface. No one sees the cracks begin to form beneath the ground. I'm tired of pretending and I wanna be let go of all your burdens, though I know you've had it tough. I am whole. I'm a soul. And even though the memory tastes so sweet, she wonders if even then she could hear the distinct sound. Come on, get up. It doesn't matter If you stop, you won't survive.
Okay, brilliant. That was Anxiety Society. Quite hard to say fast, isn't it? Anxiety
It is.
Society.
It's a tongue twister.
Before we go on to the actual song, the video itself is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting one because we've had to do everything super low budget. So it's just been myself and my partner Tom, and it's partially filmed and partially with AI, but the AI is filmed clips of me. So we did that in our living room, completely just me and my partner, and it was a really interesting process because I just had to go and learn an AI software, and you just you have to ask it certain prompts, but I had very specific ideas of different things that I wanted to portray. So I basically made, when you see it, you'll see that there's loads and loads of different characters, and I basically made the whole music video each time with every single character and then edited them all together. So I'd have like this person, this person, this person. So there's a whole music video of each character out there somewhere.
Wow, it's very impressive. Anyone listening to this on just Spotify, something like that, I highly recommend going to YouTube and Beth's website and watching the video because it's an amazing piece of work in itself. But yeah, onto the song. It's hard hitting, isn't it? It's a powerful song, and there's a lot in it. So yeah, what was the writing process like for it? How did you get started with it?
So this whole album's been kind of interesting because it kind of happened in chronological order, and these songs, especially these early ones in the album, are really old. I wrote them like 10 years ago, and when I first started thinking that I was going to actually release this, I looked back through my lyric book and I realized I had a kind of accidental concept album, which went through from my own mental health journey. The first song is kind of before I even think about it at all. It's being kind of lost in the standards that society sets you. And this one's the kind of moment where you're going like, uh-oh, it's getting a bit much, like, and all these things are starting to hit you. So yeah, it's a little bit dark. But the whole album isn't completely dark. It moves through into a place of hopefulness, and positiveness, and a wish that society as a whole and myself as an individual can live in a happy, beautiful place.
Yeah. Brilliant. So this is the second single, and the first one was Power of the Wolf you put out a few weeks ago. Is that the order they are on the album?
Yes. So it's kind of, I've written it as if they're like chapters of a story, and I wanted everything to be, it's the chapters of my story. So Power of the Wolf, that is that first one, and is kind of interesting to me because it was like a time where I was working in bars and I was living kind of a party lifestyle, and I just living that lifestyle that I thought I should be living, but was doing lots of things that would stop me, to cover up my emotions, I think. So whether it's like, technology and, binge watching a TV series or drinking too much, all of these things to cover up my emotions. But at some point they started to spill out, and this next song, Anxiety Society, is where it is spilling out. And at the time, I really remember this moment when I was writing this, and I wasn't writing it at this exact moment, but this is the setting of it. I was sitting on a bus and I just had a panic attack for no reason, and I couldn't understand why, because there was nothing going wrong, and I intellectually knew that. I was like, I'm on a bus, there's nothing wrong, what's going on? And I think it was just the build-up of all these pressures and everything that I've been shoving down. So this music video kind of is the spillover, that moment of like, do I have to be this? Do I have to be that? And these opposing things that we feel like we have to be that aren't actually very healthy for us. And the self-doubt, the lyrics kind of go through this idea of like, I am this, I am that, I am this. And it's all these different ideas of what I actually felt like I had to be, and that was so overwhelming for me at the time. And then it gets to the chorus of anxiety, and I just sing anxiety. Keep up the play, pretend, is this the way we end? It just felt like, are we all just living this world in this life of things that we feel like we should be? This is going to be, I was very dramatic. Is this the end of is this the way that society is going to go? And this is the thing, that if we keep on just traveling down this path, it's maybe that's where society ends. Maybe this is like humanity's end point. So it's quite a dramatic moment.
yeah. It's it's very powerful, and I feel like it's one of them songs where musically, like if you heard it without the lyrics, you would probably you wouldn't be far off guessing the theme of the lyrics. I feel that it very much fits. It creates that feeling, and it feels like, when I was going to ask with the writing of the lyrics, what was that like? Because obviously there's a lot in there, but it also feels like there's an infinite amount of stuff that you could put in there in terms of like what that pressure feels like when you do start thinking of, when that anxiety starts building and you think of all these problems in the world. It feels like the song could be, it could go on forever.
It could.
What was that process like of deciding which things to put in and knowing where to boundary it?
I think the first two lines I already had in my head. I was thinking, I'm voracious in my appetite, ferocious in my thoughts. And I was thinking about how much I was told that you have to be so successful, like you have to fight for things and you have to go for things. So I was trying so hard to achieve all those things in life at the time. And realizing that also my mind was the thing that was being so horrible to me all the time, being like, you're not enough. So those two things kind of came up, and I had that first line, and actually from there it kind of just flowed. I had that line, and I had this kind of feeling that I wanted of like a walking pace, a kind of creepy walking pace. So it felt like you're walking through life, but there's also something kind of creeping up behind you. And once I had that, I wrote kind of an instrumental for the verse. I just sung over it, and the words just kind of came out. And as far as I remember, there was probably a few moments that I had to swap. And at the start of it, there's a spoken word section. And the spoken word section, actually, this all came afterwards. This was part of the album as a whole. Once I realized it was kind of a story, I wrote a fable that sits around the whole album, and this fable kind of comes in and out through the whole album. So I have that as the introduction to it, a little bit spoken word, and then into the actual song, and then it finishes with spoken word again.
I was going to ask about that, whether that was a theme that comes throughout the narrative between the songs.
Definitely.
Definitely.
And with the construction of the music, I love like cinematic music, so I wanted to be really emotional, and I love a bit of strings, so there's a lot of that. And I'm a 90s girl, so there's a lot of 90s trip hop vibes in there. And Celtic-y vibes as well. So I have a lot of kind of influences from my background and my lifestyle. But I wanted the key thing to be storytelling and everything. I wanted it to like be emotional, not necessarily like crying, but I wanted to hit people emotionally, and I wanted to be able to tell stories and make it a proper story. And my background is actually musical theatre, so maybe that's where that comes from, And I think humans are all storytellers as well. I think we like stories.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So you say this was about 10 years ago you wrote this, and Power of the Wolf was written even before that, was it? And then what's the process been of that? The rest of the songs, are they also songs that you wrote over that period, or was it like? And I guess have you do you consistently write, or did you stop writing for a while and come back to it?
So yes, they are throughout a long period of time. There have been periods of time throughout the last 10 years where I haven't written at all, especially when I have been really, really busy or overwhelmed, like at this moment. At that point, actually, there's a little bunch of them because I had a bit of a tricky time in that I got signed to a management company, and at this time I was like, right, yes, I'm going to do loads of writing. But the company ended up like basically scamming me. So it was a nightmare. And so this was at the time they kind of got me involved with different producers, and that was great. And I started working on these songs, and they basically did not pay anyone, disappeared. I ended up paying everyone out of like my own pocket, which I at this point, like, as I say, I had stopped working actually to do the project. But before I had just been, working in bars, not high paid jobs. I didn't have any money. So I ended up having to pay out quite a large sum for me at the time. And I remember being at this point like, I've written all these songs, they're kind of half produced, I've paid out all this money, and I went into my cupboard to go and get a snack, and all I had was a bag of rice and some tinned peaches, and being like, is this all I'm going to be able to eat? Like, I didn't have any food or anything, so my friend was so nice and sent me a shop round. It was a horrible time.
Yeah.
And so that kind of put a stop to it. I felt like I don't want to be part of this industry if that's how people are treated. I had a few other friends who'd actually been signed to major labels and had different issues around financially around stuff, and I was like, I don't want to be part of this. So that kind of took me into what I'm most well known for, is teaching and my YouTube and working in that side of things. So I went back and was like, I just want to go and like help people and do singing from that side. So I stopped writing for a while, but it's always been a way for me to deal with my emotions, I guess, and to process things. So there have been throughout the years just different points where I've been writing for myself. And I had throughout those years just many different songs that I was like, oh, okay, I have written a whole bunch of songs. And yeah, like last summer, it was probably just after COVID actually, so maybe a little bit earlier than that. But I was sitting with my partner, and I've been doing a lot of teaching, and he's like, why, you've been really down the last few weeks, like you're never, you're quite a jolly person. Anxiety Society says I'm not, but I was at that point. And I was like, I just feel like I have all these songs. I'd just been looking at them, and I realized I had all these songs, and it felt like I know I'd half finished them, and that I hadn't given them the life that they deserved. So he was like, why don't you do it? And I was like, can I? I didn't even think like, should I? Is that a possibility? And he's like, do it, just do it. So yeah, that's what led me to do it. And the final few were written after that decision. But maybe I think 2 or 3 of them, but up until then they've just been ones that kind of happened.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. And I mean, yeah, sorry to hear about the stuff with the management company. It's so like,
Okay.
it's so sad that feels like, I've heard that happen to lots of people, where people get screwed, and like, to put people off music, like the business side of it can just really ruin people, can't it? And
Yeah.
and yeah, it's such a, yeah, it's so sad when those kind of things happen.
Yeah.
And I guess it's also like, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? The purpose of what we write for, of like, a lot of times when people get into those kind of things, it almost loses the enjoyment. So, I mean, it's good to hear then, like, you still would still write just for the sake of writing, without having to think about what the product is at the end. Just being like, I'm just enjoying writing, so I'm gonna write. Yeah, and then so what was the question I was going to ask you about the release then? Yeah, so So then you decided you were going to do it and going to do the release, and then. So then when you looked at the songs, was that when you realized you had a kind of story, and then you realized you needed like an end to the story, and that was the new ones, you had a particular kind of
Yeah.
closure that you wanted to write?
Yeah, I think I looked through the story and I realized that they just were very rooted in how I felt, because they literally were for me and my emotions at each time. So it was really rooted in how I felt at different points in my life. And alongside this, I had gone through a massive mental health journey. I'd gone from this place of anxiety society and into going to therapy and really reading every book I could on it, and I'm really just working out my mind and trying to become the best version of myself, not in a like, oh, I don't know, achievement culture way, in
Mm.
a like, in a calm and uh happy and healthy way. So, and it's still something, of course, you never end working on that, but I have got to a place where I never had any official diagnosis, but I would say I was depressed at that point. And I feel like, and I never felt, and at that point, I wouldn't go to anyone for help. I didn't feel like, I felt like therapy was for people who had extreme um, mental illness, but not for a person who just felt really sad all the time. Um, and I wanted the album to finish in a place that shows that there is hope on the other side. I didn't want it all to just be like, it's all terrible. I wanted people to know that, like, I got there. Like, I got to a place where I am happy. I can regulate my emotions, some of the time, most of the time.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. And what's I guess, what's your writing process like, and is it different now from them earlier ones? And like, so yeah, I'll ask you that first. I've noticed when I'm doing this podcast again, I always like stack up questions to people and I ask them like 2 or 3 questions at a time. And I think I should just try and do one question at a time. So
Okay.
yeah, has your process of how you write songs changed? So obviously you said that there's a different there's a different kind of musical feel to them, which sounds like it's intentional anyway. But is the way you write songs different now than the way it was when you wrote these ones?
I don't think in technique it's different, and I've written songs kind of differently. I was talking about this to my partner. We're very free flowing in our creative process. Even like the music videos and stuff, it's very much like uh one of our friends is like very he works in like film and stuff, and he's very like, you need to make sure you've got all your shots set up, and we're like, yeah, that's good, see what happens, and then we'll work it out, and then we kind of create from what we've got. So that happened with basically all of them. Sometimes like Anxiety Society was that first, those 2 lyrics that I had. But sometimes what I love doing is, I think this is my favorite thing actually, is creating a kind of almost like a palette of colors with all the different sounds I want to use. So I kind of create this world, a sound palette world for the songs to live in, and then create from there. It's more about the feeling of that moment.
Mm.
And that creates that feeling, and then I want to create out of that. Sometimes it's a lyric, sometimes it's some chords, sometimes I'm sitting at the piano, sometimes I've created an instrumental piece and I work out lyrics on top of that. So it's very random,
It
but
varies.
it just varies. It's what just whatever brings me inspiration at the time, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're doing that sound palette, is that something that you do? Like, do you sit at the computer and like record different? Is there any, or does it just vary all the time? Is there any particular process for how that goes?
Yeah, I normally just like to go through um on yeah, I just go through on Logic and listen to all the different sounds, and we'll go and find find things that sound like the feeling that I'm aiming for.
Mm.
And so that I end up, with like high frequency and low frequency and mid and often some strings, and maybe so for Power of the Wolf, it's got this kind of very eerie intro where I found some string sounds and then I like warped them so they sound a bit like wolf howling. I had Power of the Wolf as a song. That was actually the only song that I wrote with someone else. But I wanted to have, like, I was thinking of like it being in a forest, and I wanted this kind of sonic palette before to bring the listener into that space before they go into the song, so that they're in the creepy wolfy forest as well.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant! Yeah, that sounds like a really interesting way of doing it. I'm rubbish at all the kind of like music, like recording software. So I'd love to be able to play. Like I love when seeing people do that, where they create a whole set of. I'm very much like acoustic guitar and notepads kind of guy. But yeah, it's amazing what you can do on those kind of programs. And have the songs evolved? Like, so is Power of the Wolf like the same as it was when you first wrote it, or is it different now? And same with Anxiety Society?
So Power of the Wolf is more so partially because I wrote it with someone, so I feel like I don't want to rip it up, his rating up as well. So that song, there's a couple of changes in lyrics, and the production is completely different. It was more of a, I don't know, like a general kind of a more common pop song as a pop song, whereas now it's, I don't know, a little bit who knows what genre. And Anxiety Society, that one just also is fairly as is actually, but there's ones later on. There's one that's coming up called Body Armor, and I had the verse and the chorus wasn't there. I had the verse and the instrumental, and I had a chorus which I will never share with anyone because it was terrible. I took that off and I put when I went back, I was like, no, Beth, previous Beth, that was terrible. And it's got a new chorus. So there's plenty of changes actually in those middle ones, especially where you think, yeah, that wasn't quite right.
Yeah, that's the other thing I was going to ask was what that process is like. So I've got loads of really old notebooks, but I hate looking. Sometimes I try and make myself look through them because sometimes there is something to be salvaged, but sometimes it's just like, oh, what was going on there?
Yeah.
What was that like? And was there more like rubble that you left behind from it that you salvaged? And
yeah, there was definitely a lot of rubble, as you say. So a lot of it was, these two songs were pretty complete, but there was a lot of stuff that I kind of took or combined things. There might have been, like, I'd written a few songs around an era of my life and combined those together. Yeah, the next one that's coming out is something called Phonograph Electronique. So it's I used to have a poster on my wall that said that, and that's what it came from. And the chorus was there, but everything else was little bits of lyrics. I took the lyrics from my original writing in my lyric book. Partially I'd kind of forgotten some of it as well. I knew what the chorus was and I'd forgotten how I did some of the verse. And so some of it is just, sewn together from pieces that I had, and some of it is, I remember that song and that song feels like a complete piece.
It was fully formed, yeah.
But I think you have to, as a songwriter, be okay with the fact that you're gonna write a lot of rubbish stuff. Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
And you can, like, just put it in a drawer, come back to it and be like, even if it's just like that line was great, or that melody was lovely, or you can pick little pieces and it doesn't matter. You have to write, like, this is amazing. I was listening to James Blunt talking about his new album, and he wrote 90 songs for a 10-song album. Like, that's crazy. That's so much.
Yeah, that is crazy. And I think that's such good like advice as well, isn't it? I think there's a kind of misconception a lot of time. People think that when you sit down to write, the song comes out fully formed, rather than like that everyone writes piles and piles of nonsense, and you have to get get good at editing, I guess. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And you'll go away as well. Like you'll write something, and a lot of them you go away and then you come back and you're like, right, that little bit. Oh no, I need to change that. So it's okay to like leave it for a month or whatever and just let it sit. Because often I find I get like overwhelmed, or you stop hearing things because you're just in that song so much, and you need that space to be able to step back and see it with clarity.
Yeah, definitely. You can definitely get lost in the process, can't you? Get to, and then you kind of it feels like it's hard to imagine what it would sound like to someone who hasn't heard it 1,000 times and
Yeah,
thought about
exactly.
everything. And
Yeah.
and I think having a compassionate view of your former self is a good piece of advice as well. And rather than be like, "Oh, this is terrible," thinking like, "This is the person at that time. This is what they were
Yeah.
capable of writing, whatever was going on." And yeah,
Yeah. And that is like, that forms who you are now, and it is the inspiration for a lot of that music. And it's hard, isn't it, to have compassion for yourself in general, your younger self, especially if you've been like, oh no, why did I do that? But whether it's for writing or just general life, I think it's important to um yeah, I don't know if it's even forgiveness, and even more than that, it's like embracing that part of yourself, because that has made your journey, and you wouldn't be you without your journey. Which sounds really cheesy, but it's true.
and so yeah, definitely true. And the like the idea that an album is like a representation of you at a moment in time, rather than. So I always think that with like, just with recording, you can kind of just go on and on and on and trying to make it as perfect as possible, and like you're never going to achieve that. It's always going to be like, this was at this moment in time, which is one of the things why I love live music so much, I think, is that then that's that song in that moment right now. It's not like what the artist was capable of 20 years ago. Yeah.
And we evolve as people and artists so much that it's so changeable. And that's quite a tricky thing in some ways too, if you're trying to be a commercial artist, because if you're successful or not, people, either way, there's a lot of expectations. So you release something and people are like, all right, do the same thing again. And then, there's that thing where like someone releases their first album and everyone loves it, and then the second one, everyone's like, oh, the second album, but because it's different. It's not, but also maybe if they release that second album first, it wouldn't feel like that, or it just connects with a different audience. So it's kind of hard as an artist. You have to I think you just have to follow your own heart with it, and not worry too much about what other people think, because people will connect or people won't connect, and you can't control that.
Yeah, definitely. It's one thing I always joke about with like the certain artists that I love, that the original, like you never quite know what you're going to get, like Nick Cave's a bit like that for me, and Tom Waits as Two Big Heroes of Mine, like, when they put a new album out, like it might be really different to the last one. But then there's other bands where, like AC/DC, the example I was like, if AC/DC put out like a really like obscure, ballad album, I'd be like, what's going on? I want AC/DC rock. Like, I'm kind of happy for them to put the same album out every couple of years, but other artists, I've got like I want something new and interesting every time.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, it's a funny world, and it's two different things as well, writing for yourself and then writing commercially. And I think most artists, some people are lucky and they manage to bridge that gap, and then you have some artists that are just writing commercially and some who are writing for themselves, and you just have to find what's right for you. Some people like love writing those big commercial hits and just thinking like, what would people love? And some people just love writing for those moments that they're actually in as well.
Yeah. Do you have any? This might be a weird question, might be a hard question to answer, I guess. But do you have a sense of when you've written something that you feel is right? I guess like when you've written a song, we've talked about a few of these things, of like the different voices that can be in your head of what the aim of the song is, and obviously the thinking about like, how is this going to be received, and is this something that I just feel good to have written? Do you have any kind of like sense or way of describing what it feels like when you've done one and you think like, yeah, I feel good about that? That feels true.
Yeah, it's tricky because I think with these songs especially, because they're also personal that it's been quite hard to know, I would say. And also, like, I've only just released them, so I have no idea what, and a lot of them are you know, we'll see if people like them or they don't. I don't know. The first two, you know, it's been lovely to see that there has been a really nice response to them. I think that I know if it's right for me, but I can't tell if it's right for other people. And what I found actually really interesting with this album is that when I've shown friends and family and they've listened to it as a whole, everyone likes a different song. Like, everyone is like, that's that song. And I think because it shows, I suspect because it comes from different points in my life, and knowing those people, often I feel like it's the point in life that they're at in a weird way. So, like, people will be like, oh my god, there's like a love song in it, and like my friend who likes it is someone who's like just, you know, like got engaged to their partner. So, like, you know, there's like that sort of thing is like, it's so funny that those sit within what those people are feeling at the time. So I don't really know how other people will receive it, but I do just want to write things that I like, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess that was what was kind of interesting. It was like, from your perspective of what, when you feel happy about a song, yeah.
And it's hard for me as well because I think people, because I do have such a diverse taste in music, it's hard to hone in and be like, this is what I want to create. But I think I know when I'm finished anyway. When it's time to stop, because that's another thing. You can just keep on writing forever and then that bit's not quite right. And having said that, I still go back and I listen and be like, oh, I wish I'd redone that line. I sung that differently, or I'd put a different sound in there. But you have to stop at some point.
Yeah. Do you know what that? Again, it's like something that I'm really interested in. That's when you know that song's finished. Of like, just what that is. It like, is it a feeling, or is it like you know that it's like I've said everything I need to say there?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is just a feeling. Yeah, and I'm like, this is what I wanted. This is what I wanted it to sound like. And most of the time as well, I have a habit of like overdoing things and then having to take it back. So you'll probably be shocked by that because they're all massive songs, but they were even more massive to begin with. You'll be like, how could you have put more stuff in that? No, I did. So I think for me, I work the song to exhaustion, and then I have to go, okay, let's take this back. Okay, now it's done.
It's like a pendulum swing. It kind of goes too far that way, then you kind of pull it back and you find that
middle point.
Sweet spot.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the rest of the album. That's really interesting. So let's move into section 2 now, shall we? This is where I ask my guest to share with us a songwriting tip. So what would your tip be for us today, Beth?
My tip? I didn't think about this properly before, so I was like, oh. What's the best tip? I think is when you're writing a song, don't worry what other people think. If you write with truth, then it's going to connect with someone. I think that's what it is. And then make a sound palette.
Nice. Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. Of like, there's a quote that I really like. It's something like about being so authentic that it gives space for other people to be authentic as well. But like, something about that, when someone is true, it kind of resonates. And then what you were saying about people listening to the album and how, you know, the songs that they most connect to, the ones that most feel like relevant to them at that time in their life. And then what jumped to my head there was a conversation I had with another friend recently so like in a year's time, they might all switch around. All those people who had favourites this time might be like, oh well, now actually my life's different, and now this is the song that I relate to. I think that's such a good piece of advice for writing, of like, whatever's true for you in your life at that point will be true for other people as well. So if you're writing that, honestly, there is going to be people who connect to it, rather than, I guess, the flip side would be people who like, think, oh, well, I'm going to have to write an album of love songs, or like, rock anthems or political songs, or trying to write to a prescription, whether that's what they're actually feeling at the time.
Yeah. I think it's also important to understand why you're doing it as well. I think that if you're so worried, we all would love everything to be the super, super successful. That would be the dream for us all. We were, going to our Wembley Arena gig. But I don't think that can be the aim. I don't think anyone who originally started out and even are at that level were going, I'm writing this for Wembley. Maybe they were. Maybe there's some people that were, but I think people are just writing it because it feels good to write. And that's most of the time it's people respond to authenticity and emotion and vulnerability. And I think and that sounds weird because you can have a vulnerable and emotionally connecting, really happy song, but it just has to be like true. You have to be like, "Woo, yeah, I'm really happy in this moment, and that's what I'm writing."
Yeah.
If you're feeling really sad and you're trying to write a happy song, it's not going to
work. Yeah. Did you? I don't know if this went the same for you. I always find writing darker songs easier than writing happier songs. Was there any difference for you? So obviously you said the songs at the end, and I've not heard these ones at the end of the album, but whether they're like happy, or whether it's like positive, but from a space of darkness in a way.
Yeah, no, the last one is definitely very positive. It's definitely, I definitely used to find it easier, I think, to write dark songs because it is that emotional. I think, me processing my emotions. I think the last ones for me were more about what I wanted. This sounds counterintuitive to what I've been saying, but what I wanted everything to end on and what I wanted to give to the world. So I didn't want everyone to just be left in a pool of sadness at the end of the album. So that's what made it easier, because I felt I wanted to write something, for example, for like the kids that I teach. I don't want them to be sitting listening to my sad anxiety society song. I mean, they can if they want, but like, it's really dark and the world is dark and there's a lot of that to deal with. So I wanted to have something that I'm like, here's something that you guys can have, and spurs us on to a positive future, which can be so hard in this world. But I don't know, I felt like I actually, for all of the happy ones, wrote a kind of happy instrumental first. So maybe that was the way that made it easier for me. I don't know. Finding the again, that base of emotion, and then everything else happened after that.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that makes it. I imagine if I was wanting to write a happier song, that would be a better way to start. It would be to write some happy music.
Yeah, it's hard to be like, happy, what's it going to be about?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've often thought about, and I think I've heard other writers talk about this, is that the reason they find it harder to write happy songs is because when they're happy, they're out doing things, and when they're sitting writing is when they're often feeling a bit like unsettled. And it's like, I'm writing to kind of get out of this spot in a way, rather than like, I feel great, I'm going to go write a song now. But yeah, maybe we should do more of that.
Yeah. And I think that there's a place for both, right? We need both. And sometimes, when I'm in my kitchen doing cooking, I don't want to listen to a sad song, right? I want to just be enjoying life, so I'll probably put on some soul or something that I can just dance around to. But when I'm like chilling out, or I'm feeling sad, or I have emotions that I want to deal with, then I'm going to be listening to sadder music. And so they're all needed. So I think that often, I think there's like a weird thing where people feel like as well, if you write something happy, then it's not as authentic, or maybe this is something that I just felt like it wasn't as authentic or true or good, almost like it's too, happiness is almost too cheesy.
Yeah.
But it isn't. It's,
Yeah.
I mean, in a weird way, it's like one of the most, if it's authentic, which is hard because I think the thing that people find inauthentic is like the fake, like bubblegum pop idea of it not really being good, we're covering up. But if it's like truthful, then it's like really radical, because no one writes like truthful happy songs.
Yeah. No, I think you're spot on there. I think it is like, I think there is a kind of tendency to draw towards like the idea that sad songs are like more sophisticated or more, I don't know, because
Yeah.
they're dealing with difficult things. Whereas I think you're right that like writing a happy song is like potentially even harder, because it's like trying to convey happiness in the face of difficulty, and like it's not just like, because I think the Everything Is Awesome is kind of a good example, I think, of what the idea of like a simplistic happy song is. Just like everything's great, this is it.
Yeah.
Whereas really to write a happy song that, you know, is really connecting, is balancing that light with the shade. Though it's like it just I think some Nick Cave said, what's jumped into my head when you were talking there about when he was talking about, dealing with the death of his son, and like choosing to be happy felt like a really kind of brave thing to do. And like I think that felt quite similar to what we're talking about here, of like despite all this, you know, the terrible stuff that goes on in the world and terrible stuff that goes on in our own heads, to choose to be happy and to choose to try and express that is really hard.
Yeah, and that was like a real theme actually, like in the album, is that everything that we see in our perspective and the world to us is mostly the stories that we tell ourselves. And these early ones, I recognize that in myself. These early ones, I was telling myself all the Anxiety Society lyrics, and by the end, I'm telling myself all the ones that are in Our Day Will Come, which, as you can hear from the title, is a much more joyful song. And I wanted, but I think they still have to acknowledge the darkness. There's still like, some of them are, I guess it's hope more than just like, I'm just happy for no reason, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm hopeful for a future. And that's, as I say, it's maybe I was lucky that there wasn't too much bad news on the week I was writing it.
It could have all just flipped again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. That's really interesting, Beth.
Maureen went peacefully, and she went in my arms. I could speak to her, but it wasn't enough. There were still things I wanted to say to her. But the end product, even now I can't believe it. I think it's wonderful, you know, and it encapsulates everything of what I wanted it to do. And if I'm feeling down, I can play that, and hopefully it'll lift me up. And if I'm feeling high, let's think about the good times.
If you would like to help more people like John write songs in memory of loved ones, please donate to the Swan Song Project today. Brilliant. So let's move into section 3 now, shall we? This is where I ask my guests to share with us a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. And what I'll do here is I'll ask Beth to tell us about a song in a moment, and I'll put the link in the description. So if you're not familiar with the song, you can pause our chat here, go and listen to it, and come back to us. So which song did you choose for this section, Beth?
I've chosen Both Sides Now by Joni Mitchell.
It's an incredible song, isn't it?
Beautiful.
It's just, yeah.
It's beautiful. The lyrics are so wise, and so interesting, and I love how she's thinking of the different ways. It's storytelling as well, the stories that she's telling herself, the same idea of going through all these different like the clouds and love, the different ways that she's looking at it. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's incredible. And like, this little songs were kind of like, it almost annoys me a little way that she was like 20 odd when she wrote it.
Why are you so good?
how is that possible that someone has that much perspective and wisdom at that age?
Yeah. What I love as well is there's a version, you hear the version that she's sung in her early 20s, and it has a really different feeling. It's like light and it's more hopeful. And then there's a version, this beautiful version that she sung maybe like 10 years ago or whatever, and her voice, I mean, it has changed dramatically. She smoked a lot, so it's kind of got this huskiness to it, and she's dropped the key, so it's lower, and it feels so wise. I actually prefer that version because she has such wisdom in her voice at that point, and I think her voices are amazing. They tell there's so much we can hear in how a person communicates about their lives and who they are. And I feel like she's probably changed dramatically if her voice has changed dramatically during that time.
I'll have to listen to some of those later versions of it.
Yeah,
there's a line in it of what was it, when something's lost but something's gained in every living day, that I thought was just like, and again, it kind of feels like it's a good example of what we were talking about there, isn't it, where like it's kind of acknowledging a lot of the darkness but then looking at the positives as well, that something's lost but something's gained.
Yes, yeah. And it is a kind of the earlier ones, I kind of the earlier voice of her, I always read it as her like wondering how to live life, as we all are. Like, you know, there's often a balance that you're trying to find. And the older one, it's like, I think I'm working it out just about. I think it's really beautiful. And this was a song that, you know, relates to me. I sang it at my granddad's funeral. And I actually didn't know it that way. It was my mom that suggested it. She was like, oh, granddad would like this song. And I remember finding it quite hard to sing. I mean, it's hard to sing at a funeral anyway, but it was hard to sing the more I listened to the lyrics. I was like, oh, this is so difficult to get through. But it also felt really fitting because it feels like it encompasses so much life. And that's a nice thing to bring to a funeral. Yeah,
definitely. Again, it feels like another great example where the music just tells the story itself, doesn't it? It feels perfectly fitting for what the lyrics are saying with the music. And
I think, you know, I love Joni Mitchell's music in general. I think that she wrote some incredibly wise music, and it isn't she, as you say, it sits in that place between like happiness and darkness. Most of her music, it's very like human, and it also gives you a little bit of hope for the future. And I wanted, when we were looking at songs to sing at my granddad's funeral, and that's what he'd like asked, that's what I wanted it to end on. I guess I don't want everyone to just be like, this is the worst thing ever. I didn't think that would be something that he would want either. He wants everyone to like live past that moment and live a happy life.
Beautiful. Well done for doing it. Like, I performed at I've not performed at funerals for people close to me personally, but through Swan Song I've done some, and they're difficult, aren't they?
Yeah, no, it's really difficult.
But equally very special. It feels very kind of like, whenever I've done them, I felt very honoured to be there and be able to do it. But did you find, what was the experience like for you, I guess, in compared to performing usually? Was there anything
quite different.
Yeah.
Just makes me laugh because one of the things that is difficult is when you're emotional, your voice, it really reflects on your voice. And it's interesting because when you're singing, you obviously want to express emotion, but if you're kind of well practiced, you learn to your body doesn't respond in the same way, but you pick and choose it a bit more where you want to put that emotion on, and you don't have to have that real like, if you try and sing while you're crying, sometimes you just can't control your voice at all, right?
Yeah.
So when you're really that emotional and it's just in your body, it's so hard to be. I don't think it was the best singing I've done in my life, but I don't think it mattered. Well.
Yeah, beautiful. Brilliant. Well, that seems like a nice point to end it on, Beth. But thank you very much for your time. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm looking forward to hearing the album.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. When's the album come out?
So actually it's individually, each song is coming out every 3 weeks, so it's going to be a slow burn online, but it is already available on my website, so you can have it in CD form or vinyl form, or you can just wait for them to slowly find their way onto the internet.
Yeah, brilliant. Good stuff. So yeah, I'll put all the links in the description, so people can check out your stuff. And yeah, Beth is a very popular YouTube channel, so I first came across Beth of doing vocal coach reacts videos, so breaking down other people's singing styles and techniques and stuff like that, which is great as well. So if people want to watch at the end, they can do. And yeah, I'll put all your social media links and everything there as well. So yeah, thank you much, Beth, and thank you much for tuning in, everyone. I'll be back with another episode soon.